We moved in to save money and build a life together. But he treated me like a maid, then humiliated me at a party in front of everyone. So I packed my things, left a note, and watched everything fall apart. If one more person tells me I'm so lucky to have a creative boyfriend, I might actually scream. Because let me tell you, there's nothing glamorous about living with a 31-year-old man who thinks washing dishes kills his artistic spirit. Nothing. And I say that as someone who just spent her Saturday night scrubbing dried pasta off a plate while he smoked weed on the balcony and brainstormed podcast titles that don't even exist. My name's Jenna, I'm 26, and until recently, I thought I was just a little burnt out. Turns out, I was slowly suffocating in a relationship I mistook for a partnership. It started last year. My apartment had water damage and needed repairs. Miles, my then boyfriend of 8 months, said, "Why don't you just move in here? Save on rent, share groceries, cuddle more?" I was hesitant. He's a freelance editor/sometimes poet, which basically means he's at home a lot. But I said yes. I thought it might be fun. Cozy, even. Spoiler, it wasn't. The first month was okay. He made playlists for our mornings, cooked once in a while, and left little notes with doodles. Then the quirks started to show, like how he forgets to flush if he's rushing to write down an idea, or how I became the default cleaner, shopper, bill payer because he gets anxious with money stuff. And for a while, I convinced myself that this was just a phase, that I was being helpful, supportive, a good partner. But that illusion shattered last Friday. Miles had this friend, Pete, turning 32, big birthday dinner, at some overpriced restaurant where every appetizer looked like a science experiment. I didn't really want to go, but Miles said Pete respected our relationship and wanted me there. Whatever that meant. We got there a bit late, and I was already in a mood because Miles insisted we stop for rolling papers on the way, and he somehow took 20 minutes choosing the right vibe. But I put on my best neutral face, smiled, and sat down next to him at the long table of wine, candles, and people I barely knew. Miles immediately launched into performance mode. He started telling exaggerated stories, laughing too loudly, interrupting people with, "That reminds me," like he was hosting a late-night show. And every time someone asked a question, he'd loop me in like I was the prop. "Oh, Jenna handles all the adulting. She's got our rent on autopilot. I just Venmo her when I remember." Jenna's like a cleaning wizard. I swear I haven't touched the toilet brush in 6 months. People laughed. I smiled, tight-lipped. I wasn't even drinking because I had an early shift the next morning, but I started regretting that fast. Then came the moment I won't ever forget. Someone asked a generic question, "What's it like living with a partner?" And Miles stood up like he was giving a toast. He raised his glass, looked right at me, and said, "Well, living with Jenna is like living with your mom, but with occasional sex." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. There was this half-laugh from the other end of the table, followed by dead silence. Someone actually dropped a fork. Pete's girlfriend mouthed, "What the f—" across the table. I was frozen. Miles just chuckled and added, "No, but really, she keeps me alive. I'd starve without her." He sat down like he hadn't just humiliated me in front of 15 strangers. I didn't say anything. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and just stared at my reflection. Not crying, not yelling, just empty. I stood there thinking about all the dinners I cooked, the bills I paid when he said his invoice was late, the time I canceled a weekend trip to help him re-edit a client video last minute, the stupid way I defended him to my friends when they said he was selfish, the way I always made excuses for him. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake while Miles snored next to me, dreaming of his next project. The next morning, I started a list of every single thing I ever did that made his life easier, a list of everything I'd be taking back. And then I opened his laptop to look for a tax receipt. What I found instead was a private chat with his best friend. The last message? "She won't leave. She's too nice. I've got her trained." I closed the laptop and started planning my exit. I stared at the screen. rereading that message again and again. She won't leave. She's too nice. I've got her trained. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't even angry, yet. That would come later. What I felt in that moment was something worse. Numbness. Like everything I thought I was building with him had just collapsed in silence, and I hadn't even heard it fall. I closed the laptop, walked back to the kitchen, and stood there for a while. The smell of stale coffee and the pile of dishes in the sink suddenly felt like a punch in the face. I realized I had created a life for two people while the other one just coasted. It wasn't just about the rent or the chores. It was how often I bent myself backwards to accommodate him, how I apologized first every time, how he never remembered my work schedule but always had time to rant about how creativity shouldn't have deadlines. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. Titled it, What I Do That He Doesn't Notice. It started simple. Rent setup, mine electric, internet, water. All under my name. Toilet paper, soap, trash bags. Me, groceries 90% of the time. Me replacing the coffee filter every week. Me scheduling his dentist appointment last fall. Also me. Then it spiraled. I added emotional stuff, like how I always texted him when he was out late just to check he got home safe. Or the way I bought him those noise-canceling headphones when he complained my typing distracted him. Or the time I stayed up all night reading his short story draft so I could give feedback by morning. Halfway through writing, I started crying. Quietly. No sobbing. Just tears falling because suddenly it was so obvious. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his support staff. And he was proud of it. By Sunday, I had stopped speaking to him entirely. He noticed, but barely. He made some joke like, "Oh no, the house elf is mad," and went back to his video editing. I started moving differently. I unplugged my stuff, my speakers, my laptop dock, my Kindle charger, and placed them in my closet. I pulled out an old duffel bag and started folding clothes I actually cared about. Nothing flashy. I didn't want to tip him off. Then came the voice memo. Monday night, I was packing my jewelry into a pouch when I heard him laughing in the living room. His phone was on speaker. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the walls are thin. I heard his friend ask how things were with the live-in. Miles laughed and said, "Bro, I could cheat in front of her face, and she'd still fold my laundry." I felt my hands go cold. I waited until he went to bed. I went out and grabbed his phone off the coffee table. I wasn't proud of it, but I opened the Voice Memos app. There it was. A full 3-minute recording he'd sent to his friend, joking about how training your girl is like training a dog. You just gotta reward the behavior you want and ignore the rest. He was laughing, talking about how I cleaned up his messes, paid for stupid boring stuff, and never gave him drama. He ended it with, "She's boring, but convenient. I'll keep her until I don't need her." I sat there, holding his phone like it might catch fire. Then I airdropped the memo to myself. I didn't say a word the next morning. I cooked breakfast like I always did, except this time I used the last egg, the last slice of bread, and the last of the coffee. I washed my plate, left his dirty pan in the sink. That night, I told my best friend Leah everything. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "You ready to torch it all?" I nodded. We made a plan. I'd move my essentials out while he was at his weekly inspiration walk on Thursday. He'd never notice. And then Leah said, "You should leave something behind." I asked, "Like what?" She smiled. Evidence. The next day, I printed out the transcript of his voice memo, and I taped it to the inside of the kitchen cabinet. By the time Thursday rolled around, my stomach was a mix of cold dread and simmering rage. I hadn't slept properly in days. I kept replaying that voice memo in my head, his laugh, the condescension in his voice, the way he said I was boring but convenient, like I was some kind of appliance he could unplug whenever he felt like it. He left at 5:42 p.m. sharp for his weekly inspiration walk, which was just his excuse to vape, scroll Twitter, and come back pretending he'd had a life-changing thought about art. He said he'd be gone 2 hours. That gave me 120 minutes. I'd been rehearsing this moment in my head like it was a heist. Leah parked outside in her beat-up Civic, ready to help me load the essentials. I moved fast. Clothes, laptop, headphones, favorite mugs, books, important documents, all labeled and packed in advance. No tears, just movement. I walked through the apartment room by room, grabbing what was mine. Turns out most of it was. The mattress? Mine. The dresser? Mine. Even the tiny spice rack in the kitchen with the labeled jars. Mine. The TV? His. I left it. His oversized dream board, filled with pictures of cabins, film festivals, and random Polaroids of himself, left that too. But I did flip it over, wrote "Don't forget to manifest rent" in Sharpie on the back. The kitchen cabinet still had the printed transcript of his voice memo taped inside. I left it there. I didn't take everything. I didn't need to. I just took me. As we loaded the last box into Leah's trunk, I took one final look at the apartment. It didn't look sad. It looked exposed. Like once I took my presence out of it, all that remained was a guy with an inflated ego and a pile of laundry he didn't know how to wash. I locked the door, slid the key under the mat, and left. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I scheduled an email to Miles. Subject line: "Since you're so into training, consider this your final lesson." Attached: the voice memo file, set to send at 6 a.m. I blocked him everywhere before it even went out. Leah and I spent the night eating drive-through fries on her living room floor. We watched garbage TV and didn't talk about it. I was quiet, but not because I was sad. I was processing. It's strange the moment you stop carrying someone else's weight. You don't feel lighter, you just feel your own strength again. At 6:14 a.m., my phone buzzed from an unknown number. "Jenna, what the hell is this? You violated my privacy. You can't just share personal stuff. You're acting psycho." I didn't respond. I just added that number to the block list. At 7:30, I got a text from Claire, our property manager. We'd barely ever spoken directly, just rent reminders. This time, her message said, "Hey Jenna, just a heads up. Miles emailed me asking if I could add you to the lease. Says you're still here, confused. Can you clarify?" I froze. I called her immediately and explained everything. That I had never been on the lease. That I had already moved out. That I wanted no further connection to that apartment. She paused for a moment, then said, "So, the utilities are under your name, not his." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, all of them," she sighed. "Then you may want to log in and shut them off, immediately." So I did. Gas, electricity, water, internet, all of it. I hit terminate service across the board. Some would shut down that day, some the next. And then I remembered the thermostat. I logged in, scrolled to the settings, and turned it down to 50 degrees. It was mid-January. That night, Miles posted a story to his Instagram. Just a black screen with white text. "Some people are colder than I ever imagined." He had no idea how right he was. The thing no one tells you about walking away is that freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like silence. Not peaceful silence, at least not at first. It's more like the ringing in your ears after something explodes. The kind that reminds you just how loud the chaos was. After shutting off the utilities, I expected a reaction within the hour. Miles was the kind of guy who couldn't go 5 minutes without Wi-Fi, let alone deal with no heat. But all I got was digital silence. I figured maybe he hadn't noticed yet, or maybe he was too embarrassed to reach out. Either way, I wasn't waiting around. I spent that afternoon at my new place, tiny, plain, but mine, going through everything I'd brought with me. Most of it had been stuffed into boxes in such a rush, I hadn't really looked. But as I started unpacking, I found reminders in every corner. A sock I folded just the way he liked. A mug with his favorite quote on it. My money, his quote. A grocery list in my handwriting. Almond milk, limes, oat bars. All his, never mine. And then I found the notebook. Not mine. His. He must have thrown it into my box by accident. It was this leather-bound thing he used to scribble in when he felt inspired. I opened it, expecting poems or half-baked song lyrics. What I found made my blood go cold. The first few pages were harmless, rambling notes, quotes, grocery lists. But by page 6, the tone shifted. There were lines like, "Jenna always folds the towels wrong. Fix it later. Remind her to buy more toilet paper. Don't do it myself. She feels useful. If I joke about her being boring, she tries harder to be fun. Remember that." I sat there, flipping page after page of manipulation disguised as strategy. I wasn't his partner. I was a project, a routine, a function. And then I hit the final page. Dated 2 weeks before I left. It read, "If she ever leaves, spin it. Make her look unstable. She's too quiet to fight back anyway." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. I took a photo of the page, just in case. Then I put the notebook away. Not to burn it. Not to throw it out. I had a better idea. The next day, I dropped by Claire's office to return the mailbox key. She looked up from her desk, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you again," she said. I smiled. "I just wanted to clear something up." We talked for 10 minutes. I told her everything, what I paid, what I covered, what I left behind. I showed her the note I left, the screenshots, even the voice memo. She didn't say much, just nodded slowly. Then she said, "You know, my dad's looking for a new assistant property manager, someone responsible, organized, knows the lease process inside and out." I blinked. "Are you offering me a job?" She grinned. "You basically manage that apartment better than any tenant I've had." I took the job. That same afternoon, Miles called me from a new number. I didn't answer. So he emailed me. Subject: "You made your point. Can you stop now?" Number: no, I could not. Especially not after the next thing Claire told me. Apparently, Miles had applied to lease another apartment in a neighboring building. Same property owner. He listed me as a reference. He told them we were on good terms. Claire asked me if I'd like to respond to that reference request. I said absolutely. I sent them a PDF of the notebook page. The leasing office replied, "Application denied." I didn't think I'd ever get this far. For so long, I lived in that space between almost leaving and too tired to start over. I thought closure was a fantasy. I thought justice was too big a word for someone like me. But I was wrong. After the leasing office denied Miles' application, thanks to his own words in that notebook, things started unraveling faster than even I expected. He tried to get around the system by having a friend co-sign, but the property owner flagged his name across every building in their management company. He was officially blacklisted. I found out from Claire that he called her, screaming, accused her of being unprofessional, claimed I forged everything, threatened to go public. She put him on speakerphone and said, "Miles, I heard your voice memo. You did this to yourself." He hung up. Meanwhile, his digital tantrum had already begun. I started getting tagged in vague Instagram stories. Stuff like, "Some people don't know how to keep things private." "Jealousy turns sweet girls into monsters." But here's the thing. He didn't realize how many of our mutuals had already reached out to me privately, quietly admitting they'd always noticed the way he talked down to me, that they were just waiting for me to wake up. One person, a former friend of his I barely knew, even sent me screenshots of Miles venting in a group chat. He called me calculating, said I weaponized my silence, and that I ruined his career. I didn't respond, but I saved every single message. Because here's the part that still makes my jaw drop. A few weeks later, I got an email from a freelance agency I used to recommend Miles to. They were conducting a background check on former collaborators. Turns out, one of his recent clients filed a complaint for unprofessional behavior, and they were reviewing past references. They wanted my honest opinion. So, I gave it. I didn't slander, I didn't exaggerate. I just sent them the facts, the voice memo, the notebook page, a list of unpaid shared expenses that he promised to cover after his next invoice, and a screenshot of his email calling me boring but convenient. Their response? Thank you for your transparency. We will be removing Miles from our contractor pool, effective immediately. That was it. Quiet, clean, no public drama, just consequences. And me? I'm okay, more than okay. The job with Claire's dad turned out to be something I'm actually good at. I help new tenants avoid the same mistakes I made. I tell them to read their lease, to keep receipts, and to never let someone guilt them into doing all the work. Leah and I still joke about how I should have billed Miles for maid services. But honestly, I think I got paid in full. Because the last time I saw him, I didn't plan it. I was walking through the park near my new place, AirPods in, coffee in hand, and I saw him on a bench. Alone. Hoodie up. Staring at his cracked phone. He didn't see me. And I didn't stop. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't mad anymore. He was still there, stuck in the mess he made, and I was already miles away. He once said I was too quiet to fight back, but I didn't need to be loud, I just needed to be done. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away without looking back. If you've ever been the one doing all the work, covering the bills, biting your tongue, drop a comment with a 2 and let me know I'm not alone. And if you like stories like this, consider subscribing. I've got more to share.